At least they're there. Good afternoon, B3L. We have a live Discord session going on here, a bit of a broader market overview, etc. Going to go through our usual daily update and then carry into some additional stuff from there. We have Beard Guy, we have Drunk Terran that are also here in the session. So if they want to chat and interject, they are more than welcome to do so. Market activity, we've seen a bit of a bump and a surge here over the last couple of days. Actually, this is showing the 10th. I may not be fully refreshed. It looks like it says it is there. Let's just double check. Good thing we're not doing a video on the go here. So yeah, we've got the 11th here, but my Google Slides is not picking it up. So we'll roll with it. We'll go take a look at it this way. So we had the volume bump yesterday. That was the Milady's Elon pump. Things have kind of bounced back to normal, but we are starting to see some increased volume and trading activity, which is good. At least that is there. And gas itself is again. This chart is not updating for the current day. Good old technology. Let's see if we got it over here. Also not updating for the current day on the 11th. So yesterday's not playing nice. I might just have to straight pivot off of this update here. We'll see. Um, Looking at the ratio, I haven't looked at this for a good minute, but we are seeing a bit better on the buyer to seller ratio. I think a lot of that sell off, etc., really happened through November. That November period was actually kind of the 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 bottom of I think a lot of the market, and in fact in U.S. dollar terms, I think it was there, and some of the floor prices were quite low in that range. I know we had almost like a mini bull trap as things went through, and then season two went, and a lot of that volume was there, but I think it resulted in a lot of back and forth trading, a lot of activity that was generated just for the blur points and rewards, and then we've come back kind of almost to baseline here over the last a bit, and then of course gas prices make things a little bit harder. You can see the sellers buyers really dipping off over the last little bit here, and sales as well. All of that really gas related as meme season has kind of taken hold, but meme season had slowed down up until just a little while ago. We had a bit of a Pepe breakout. I've been watching it, over the last little while, and I did a bit of a zoom out video on it, or a zoom out post on it, where when we looked at the daily, the momentum on the daily was really looking like it was peaking out there, and kind of made a mention here on the following day. Since then, we have really kind of pulled back. Um, let's see, we got an hour and 42 left on the daily. I mean, we've gone back up from where we're at, so not getting that support necessarily on the daily, but there is a potential for a bit of a rebound here on Pepe. I think there's still a decent amount of appetite for the coin, and of course we had some of that FUD that kind of was around there with Coinbase and them calling it out and things like that. And I don't know if that resulted in an additional sell off or not, but good to see that Pepe is looking a bit positive. We're getting above some of the moving averages here. There's still a bit of a down channel. I'm looking at it here. It does look like we're still in it. So, want to break up over this uh, 16, 17 range, and then potentially further. And again, we got to get past the 20, and then if we are past 20, then we could see a larger range there. But overall, the downtrend is still a bit bearish there. And if you didn't catch Mongs, and I'm not sure if Mongs is posting the videos on his sessions there, but he had a much stronger breakdown. Don't know if he indicated it was still bearish at that point, but this little breakout here is a kind of a bit of a nice surprise. So we'll see how that continues forward. And then, sorry, wrong one here, flipping all over the place. Yeah, it's much nicer having it through the slideshow because I have a ton of charts here. Gas on the hourly is is not bad. We're down from the peak range there, so that helps. And that's really going to be the determining factor for when NFTs can kind of fire up again. We are seeing some projects, I think, nearing their at least local bottoms. At least that's what I'm hoping for. When I take a look at Blur in the daily, we are seeing a bit of green on here. Some of these prices are um, lowest we've seen in some time. So um, I've been looking to see if there's any uh, must buys, but I mean the overall market trend and the overall sentiment in NFT space here is still kind of like it feels like it's still a little tough to act. It's a hard bottom to call until we see some momentum there. But so you might be thinking you're getting a really good buy in here, but that if the overall market trend continues downward, led by apes or anything like that, then um, you're just going to continue to see lower and lower prices. So it's still pretty cautious in that respect. Nothing on the short-term macro says that it's super positive. So still kind of watching for that. Kind of covered all of this, um, and then the blue chip index here as well. Bit of a reprieve, but that overall trend is continuing downward. And we're basically at levels of 65% of where we were back in mid-February. So down down a fair bit across the board in terms of USD prices. You know, down 20-25%, which has just been a continuous trend really over the last this bear cycle where get a little bit of bounces up and down here and there, but overall it's been a continuous slide in many projects there. Very few that are performing well. Captain's potatoes still looking good. Azuki's kind of cooled off from where it was looking good. Milady, Redacted Remilio, those are doing well. There's just way too much goes on with those collections for me to to go beyond that. It just seems like there's a subculture there that's not overly positive, but at the same time, I mean, in terms of a flipper or price action play, those are the kind of things that that cultish community that drives a little bit of activity. And we're going to look at these a little bit more in some of the kind of more advanced metrics. There's some interesting activity there that indicates maybe that there's a bit of a cool down on those after the kind of the run from Elon. So I will get into that in a second. Let's see if we got any other charts we want to go through. Bored apes, that point 0.4 range, or sorry, that 40, not point 0.4, 40 ETH range. Hopefully that marks the bottom on apes. I think 40 should be a solid hold. Below 40, it's hard to imagine, to be honest, for apes in the collection. And then you can see here over the last week, just the overall trend, pretty low across the board on the daily. Some positive activity there, and then 30 days. Zuki's actually flat. Actually, I don't see any percentage there, so that might be just missing those metrics there. Killer Bear's down 37. That one was a little bit more surprising. And Pudgy, Doodles, Clonex, all this last month has been pretty tough. I'm gonna pause there for a second. Those that we have on Discord, if you have any questions, you can put it in chat, etc. Let's see if I can get back to that screen here. Feel free to put it in there. We have a few more that have joined us. Duckmaster, Chief Noodle, welcome. Just going through the market, going through things. How are we feeling about Pepe and Turbo? I covered that a little bit. Actually, the comment was a bit while ago. I haven't looked at Turbo. Like I said, Pepe is just about at changing this downward trend here in looking at a possible move. There is some moving averages there that it's got to push beyond and a couple thresholds there. So it may only be a small move, but just seeing that activity, that's the most that we've seen on the 4 hour for some time. So happy to see that. Turbo as well, up 25%. So again, another quick move here. So maybe there's some appetite after what was a pretty large pullback from that massive run that both of them experienced. Um, Turbo's a little bit more interesting, I think, just because there's some support level that it's kind of moved off of here at this 068. So seeing this run here is pretty interesting. But again, it's got a little bit of a moving average change. I don't know. I don't play the moving averages quite as much as key levels, but could see a bit of a move there. But I'm not the technical analyst. I keep it pretty basic when I look at these things. So Mongs, IO, that's where you're really going to get that, or Chilla, where you're going to get that expert level trading advice in terms of our trading ideas, in terms of where we're at for crypto. Into NFT details. So working on a few different things here. This first one here is kind of more advanced metrics on, actually I'm going to skip past that one for a second. So first one is sales activity. I just wanted something that I could take and look at. Taryn, are you drunk? That type in there? What's going on there? What the heck? Did someone get a hold of your phone? You fall asleep on your phone there? Just a bunch of gibberish coming out in the chat. But the sales activity is a good way to look at the last 24 hours. And so with that, I can kind of see the top collections. Of course, you can capture this really anywhere, right? But what I wanted to do is kind of dig in a little bit more from that activity. So this is typically offset 24 hours from the max load date here. So my data is delayed by about 2 hours, and then it's also on a 3-hour refresh cycle. So it could be up to 5 hours delayed. But it gives you an idea what's happened over the previous day. So Mutant Apes leading volume, Milady, Other Deed leading on total sales. Shows us our average sale across there. Sometimes that's a little bit interesting, but it gives you an indication of where things reside in terms of floor. CryptoPunks is super funky with data and reporting. Because they have the two contracts, because they have the wrapped and then the original contract. So I've cleaned it up for some of these reports. This one, not yet, but I have to do some kind of effort to combine the two. So it will look a little bit weird that way. But the sales that are in profit, I think, is an interesting metric that you don't always see. If you look across here, if we start to see a lot of sales that aren't in profit, that's more of an indication of maybe a bit of capitulation or something going on in the market where there's a bear sentiment and people exiting. And then obviously on the flip side of that, high profit, that's just people pulling out, taking profits on results that are up. So I'll monitor that to determine what the kind of the baseline is on that. 44% on the collections that we have here. That's pretty much all the activity for the day. Actually, in fact, I think that is all 24 hours worth of activity. I pulled that out. So good luck there. The profit that was actually achieved. And so, you can see that. Floor price, where I'm able to capture it. I capture floor price based on the amount of volume that a collection is traded over a period of time. So not all projects I'm going to be able to capture floor price as well, just because there is so much data to pull out daily floor price. So sometimes I'll get zeros in there just because it's not a collection that's been around long. So that's why you can see that. But floor price is measured off of basically the lower end of sales. So WETH offers, etc., is generally what drives floor. So my floor prices will typically look a little bit lower than the current floor, but it's more of a true measure, I believe, to what is actually happening. Starbucks break. Blur sales. So looking at the collections that we're seeing, Blur versus OpenSea, and then the percentage of bid activity, which is really, when you see a lot of that bid activity. That's just that back and forth trading, which is important to note because if there is a lot of that activity going on, it's the caution is where someone over accumulates through bids and then the resulting dump on a collection. Haven't seen that quite as much, although you really have to pay close attention to the market for that activity to happen. It'd be interesting if I can measure that. It's challenging, but probably something that I want to look as large accumulation versus large sell off, and what that does to collections is that can have a pretty interesting impact. And I know there are people out there in Twitter, etc., and even some discords behind a paywall, but discords that closely monitor activities. So if someone's accumulated, say, 67 Azuki, then they'll make that note and say, okay, that's typically a farmer. Expect a sell-off on Azuki, which then becomes a bit of a pause indicator to making any kind of entry to a collection. Versus the alternative where someone's sold off 67 and maybe that's a short-term entry depending on who else is holding. So OpenSea wheat percentage I think is a really good indicator of again that slightly bearish sentiment. You start to see that pick up anytime that a collection is in a bit of a sell-off. So that's a bit of an interesting one to look at. And so 17% average, but you can see some collections are pretty high. Sometimes that's just not a lot of sales, but and then I also have some kind of measures on what type of sellers that are going on. So flippers held less than 8 days, so one through or 0 through 7 days. That's kind of flip activity or short-term sellers, especially if a collection is doing well. So you can see a lot of these collections, majority of their activity is specifically that. Where it gets a little bit more interesting though is looking at some of the long-term exits. And so the long-term exits, you'll see those when a collection is up in profit. You'll see people exit to sell into a bit of volume, and of course that is that's the best way to be doing it. And so if you see any of that, that's can be what's going on, or if the sentiments change on a collection, where some of these longer term people are selling out. Redacted Remilio, you can see here 36 long term, but also 32 of those were people that had minted, or not 32 of those, but in addition another 32 that were minted. And so I track sales. I used to track it based on same wallet to same wallet and token ID. I found that wasn't necessarily super effective, so I've gone to a bit of a broader way. So if a NFT, for instance, is bought and transferred to a different wallet, maybe cold storage and then back or whatever, I'll pick that up still, and I'll pick up that last sale price. So a little less precise, but I think it's still a pretty good way of measuring. At least that way I'm capturing all that activity, and then I'll be able to capture the last price it was sold at, etc. If there is no last price, then it becomes a mint sale, and then you can see that. Any thoughts, comments, questions regarding some of this stuff? I'm open to hearing what you guys think. The idea is that I can incorporate this into some of the daily activity or into another version, but also be able to use this to hopefully understand and pull out collection insights. So there's that sales activity, and then there's a couple more that I've started to work into as well. So project metrics, a lot of the same, but this is looking at a larger range. So here I have the last 7 days, but I could span this to 30 days or 2 days or whatever I want to do just by changing the dates and look at these collections on a longer time horizon. So then you get an idea of what is going on with collections. So, unique holder percentage, where their floor is at, the profit percentage, and profit over the that time frame. So again, this is currently weekly. Average unique daily buyers, whale holder buyers. So now, bit of this one's kind of done in a different way. So this is like project whale holders, but I'm just kind of trying to measure. So you can often see a collection being driven by a few of the most invested people, and those will result in some of that sales activity. So um, I think it's important to note whether or not they're buying or selling off or accumulating. And so I'm working on this, workshopping this one. It's currently set to 2.5% of collection size. I don't know necessarily what in 10K collection, that's 250 held. That's pretty large, right? Maybe 150, maybe that's whale size. I don't know. Maybe I just set it to someone that holds over X amount. I don't know what to measure that as. So I'm gonna continue to play with this. I'm not getting a lot of activity in here, so I think I might want to adjust that threshold. But you can see, Uzuki wise, that 201 accumulation over the last week by someone that holds more than 2.5% of the collection, right? That's pretty substantial. Or sorry, sells versus buys, so that's a bit of a sell off. So sometimes that's important to note to if there's a large whale exiting a project, that can have a bit of a impact on price over time there. So OpenSea sales, Blur sales, same kind of bit. A weave percentage, bid percentage. Again, want to kind of spend some time looking at these and determining what's meaningful. In this market, it's harder to determine what's more meaningful versus outside. Blur bid percentage is 44 on the weekly. If we go back to sales activity, we can kind of compare. So 50, 44% profit percent, and then WETH is 17. So back here we have WETH at 23. And of course, the last week is a little bit more maybe bearish than the last day, so that's interesting. And profit percentage, 59. So that's actually higher than I would have thought it would have been. But just get an idea there. And then percentage of long term exiting, the quantity of long term and long term sales percentage. So again, good to know. These are your true holders. So if you're seeing that kind of activity going on, kind of interesting. It would be kind of cool if you could even take it another step further and say, okay, what percentage of your long-term holders are accumulating, right? Because again, that's I think a valued metric. So if your long-term holders are continuing to accumulate, I think that's positive. So even if it's a buy-sell differential on that. So there's all kinds of different ways I can take this, and it's just spending some time digging into what's the most insightful for a collection, and working that through. So I'm open to ideas and thoughts on that as well, as I continue to dig on this. I've been finding that my source data has been running really effectively. And so with that, I may be able to do a lot more. So these queries they're pretty extensive in the terms of amount of data that they're processing, but they're running really effectively. So it makes it a lot easier for me to dig into all this kind of stuff. So which is fun. This one here is holder metrics. This is kind of a deeper dive on some of the holder stuff I've done on the project metrics. Each one is kind of a separate query. That's why you get some of the same repetition in these metrics. But I've just kind of gone through one phase and been like, oh, let's look at this, and then go in and dig in that. And so all that needs to be kind of dug into and cleaned up as I go. But this gets the true mint data in there, the tokens that we have. Although I think tokens can get offset by possibly one. Sometimes collections will have like a placeholder token for their collection. So you might see like 10,001 stuff like that. Although most of these look pretty clean. Unique holders, most traded. I found this one interesting. This is kind of like almost like a wash trading filter for me. So this is the most traded token in a collection. So anytime I'm seeing, and Zipsies was one actually, I spent some time digging in, trying to determine if it was wash traded collection or anything like that. But sometimes it's a good filter that way. But also interesting too is like you see some of these more blue chip collections with pretty high numbers here, but that's because your traders are just sending the same group of tokens back and forth. I've spent a lot of time looking at doodles, as I've always loved doodles in terms of art, but it's you're catching the falling knife or the dead body or whatever the case may be on doodles. So it's hard to make a buy on doodles given that. But I sit there and I look, and it's always the same NFTs that are on the floor because they're acquired, they're flipped, they're sold, they go through bids, they go through WETH, etc. So it's just a churn of a certain percentage of the collection there, right? So this metric is holders from mint. Now some of these numbers give me a little bit of pause, and I definitely want to spend some more analysis just to QA on it, because some of these numbers are pretty high. For instance, half of Meebits have held since mint. It seems high to me. Whereas like Pudgy Penguins, only 189, although Pudgy Penguins went through a real challenging time from, the previous or the original creators and then moving over to Luca. So that kind of makes sense. But just going through some of these because I think this is a really interesting telling metric. And then and also a kind of a crazy one, right? So like Moonbirds, for instance, 30% held since mint. Moonbirds was 25 ETH. They're back down actually below mint price now, and just like NFTs are NFTs are two different things, right? So NFTs are access, community, utility, etc. And I think a lot of B3L members really appreciate that. But also NFTs are often a vehicle for speculation, right? And so I guess it depends on that's why when people talk about buying and minting and stuff like that, usually it's quantities of 3 or 4, so that way you can sell to accumulate your investment, take a third and dollar cost average out, and then hold one for your moonshot or just to be a part of the community, etc. So there could be some of that going on, but it's just always sharp to remember that hey, take profits where it seems reasonable, and if you love the community, then you can always re-enter, right? Especially when there's a crazy amount of volume or something going on, because often you're going to see that return back down over time. So mint hold percentage, unique minter hold percentage. So this is if someone's out there minting 100, this factors that in and says, okay, the unique wallets that are still holding. So Moonbirds used to have 25% versus 31%. Average price, that's the average sales price over basically the duration. I have to double check that. I think that's duration, but I'm not sure what that time horizon is. Average days held less than 24 hours. So your recent activity or recent churn, 2 to 14. So this is kind of your flipper range, right? And then longer term holders throughout there, and then also unique as well. And then this would pair really well with some of your sales activity, etc. And then hopefully get to the point where I can profile maybe some of the holders, right? So your top 10 holders, or and their activity in there. That query gets a little bit more complex, but like you could say, okay, how much as your top holders own, or what percentage of the collection do they own, right? So your top 10 or top 20 holders hold 30% of the collection. Is that positive or negative, or whatever the case may be? So there's some different stuff that can be done there. And then I think that's really the big part of it. I did do blend activity earlier on in the week when blend was the hot topic. Actually, I think it's in this chart sorta, but I haven't added it in where they've added the DGOTs to this chart. But you can see just like the volume of loss trades or at loss trades. I haven't updated these floor prices recently either in this, but like if you were to go in and update where Azuki's at 13.79, that also changes this. Oops. and it factors out like where they are at profit and who's in profit, etc. So um, makes a bit of a big change there. So yeah, beer guy, thanks for the feedback. Any other questions regarding collections thoughts? Um, where's everyone at in the NFT space, or is everyone still right focused on um, the next run on meme coins, if there is one? I was actually kind of thinking about that as well. Is that, is this a bit of a hyper cycle given the fact that creating these meme coins is pretty accessible? There's been some tweets out there where, create a meme coin in 30 seconds, or I think some even created a tool that allows you to create a meme coin in 15 seconds. But this like hyper speed that this activity can be done, does that change things where this cycle just kind of burnt out a little faster because of the volume? I don't know. Maybe the volume creates a little bit more instances of rugs. I don't actively participate in that space, so I can't necessarily say. Um, in fact, I looked at doing a trade on Pepe um, just before the really big run, and I kind of chickened out. I said, "Oh no, I'm too late," and that was a easy 4x in that trade. But sometimes that's the way it is. But I mean, that's where you take, if you have a portfolio of trading that you're doing, if you have a bit of a degen section of that, then it's a little bit more manageable to fire off, say 5-10% of that, or separate it around a couple. But I think the sentiment and the amount of buzz that was around Pepe, it made it kind of a bit of a hindsight obvious move, and that's since slowed down, and because of that, that's where you can see that tail off. So it's interesting, but maybe there's another one that gets that same kind of frenzy, and then it becomes a little bit more clear. It's harder to say, but volume wise, really low. I know we used to do these sessions, and I wouldn't look at anything unless it had 100, 150 sales in the 15-minute time horizon, because that's what it took for any of these kind of short-term activity. And to get that kind of activity, you have to go to like 6 hours. So that's crazy. The change in the way volume is, even like 24 hours, you get the highest at 1061. So again, a lot to do with gas, and where that's at, and yeah. And then if anyone's curious, this is kind of the stuff that I spend a lot of my time doing, is going through basically the source data. So this is not very much unlike Dune, and there's a lot of Dune dashboards out there. Dune, however, doesn't allow you to get the data out. Or actually it does, but at a pretty substantial cost. Flipside allows you to get the data out at no cost, although they do have paid services that they've now introduced. But just replicated data for NFTs, Ethereum, actually everything. In fact, NFTs are really a small part of everything that Flipside has going on here. I can build dashboards in here, but I prefer to bring it out and have the data externally. So, but yeah, if you have any experience in doing queries or even basic, I'm happy to walk you through any of that. But it's kind of cool to be able to dig through some of that stuff, because I can basically take a run at the history of NFT trading and pull anything out of there. So, which is kind of fun to do. That is me. Open for some discussion. If anyone has any thoughts, questions, feel free to interject. If not, then we will probably wrap it up, and I will continue to work and share as we go. How's everyone liking the daily updates? Is that content in the form of a video something that people like? I know there is also NFT Statistics that puts out outstanding content on YouTube. I'm taking a lot of what I'm doing basically based on uh, what's being done there. Um, that cadence, in my opinion, can vary, and he spends a lot of time focused on art. I don't spend any time focused on art per se, at least in the art blocks realm. It's not my area of expertise, and there's so much more depth and breadth there. Um, I try to differentiate a little bit there, and I'm also planning on adding in maybe the sales activity into there to look at recent activity and metrics that stand out there, as well as maybe some of the top stories. But they are produced much faster, without any extra production quality layered in there or anything like that, just because of time consideration. Because NFT, that's his full time gig, and this is not my full time gig. Um, as much as it might be pretty sweet to be my full time gig, so do what we can there. So um, Danksy did mention that he does like the video content that's produced out of these sessions. So I don't know if I have the possibility to I keep saying I'd like to do more sessions a week, but then I often only get one in. But I think ideally I can get to two a week, and then the other days do the daily. Wednesdays are a write off for me because I go into the office that day. So um, outside of my office and office work, it's family time and cooking dinner, and then I spend all my actual analyst work that I do in the late evenings while watching TV, to the chagrin of my wife. But I find this stuff interesting, so I gotta have my hobby too, right? So is what it is. But yeah, who else do we have in here? Gonza, Paradox. Thanks for showing up. And Copen, Copen mechanism. There we go. That was harder. There's a lot of words there. C4. I know it's tough sometimes on a late Friday afternoon to get to these sessions, but actually I found they've ended up being one of the best times to do it. Obviously Fridays they're more casual for most people, so sometimes it's a little easier there. So we'll see what other days I can get these done on. So appreciate it. No other questions. Going once, twice, three times. Let's go. Don't be shy. For anyone that doesn't show up often, easily put them into public VC chat. I can get at that nice and easy, and I watch that as these go on. So it's a good way to comment if you don't want to do voice, which is not a problem. So if not, then we will catch you all later. We'll stop it here, and actually I'll cut the video here. I do upload these